So on Meta and Google, you're relying on their willingness or ability to share demographic information for these customers. With Data Shopper, if they come to your website, you can gather that information.
Yep. It's not relying on like everyone else's pixel. It's one pixel that can push the data to any format you need in order to reach out.
How do you get that much information on me? If I just visit your website, how do you all of a sudden do you know my net worth or my Apple ID or anything else that you're collecting?
Some of that is the secret sauce, but generally,
you are a pretty prolific entrepreneur and you're building some really cool stuff. But I think what's most interesting is the way that you've built on top of yourself. Like you took one small win to the next win to the next win. You're just snowballing, you're compounding. Can you talk about, I guess, what was the first series of events that made you think, I can be an entrepreneur, I can do this?
the very, very first thing that I did online was I created these mystery boxes on eBay. This is going to date myself a little bit. Back in like 07, 08. I got into it via my brother and one of his friends. Quickly found out that that was against the platform rules. So drove a lot of sales really quickly and thought like overnight I was going to be a massive success.
What was against the rules?
Flagged as gambling, and we're going back almost 20 years now. But basically what we would do is we would say, here's a mystery box. People would bid up to like $50 on it. And in one of those mystery boxes, I can't remember which version of PlayStation was that at the time, but in one of those mystery boxes, there was a PlayStation, and in another one, there was like a $5 bill or like a CD or something like that. So, you know, it's basically like rolling the dice and gambling on getting a PlayStation. And most did not, but the people that did left very positive reviews. So that was like the entry of it. And then, I mean, it turned into many, many things.
Wait. I got to ask about this mystery box stuff. How old were you?
07, I was 18, 19 years old.
Okay. So 07, 18, 19, you're doing these mystery boxes. How many of them did you sell?
I don't remember at the time. I think like within a few hours, there was like $3,000 of sales, which like back then was enormous. It got shut down really quickly.
Was that one box though? They just bid up 3,000 to one box, or did they do multiple boxes?
So actually there were multiple boxes. So some of them were not selling quite like the one that kind of got us flagged. It actually worked for a little bit. It was like a modest money. You know, we'd list different boxes that had different things. I mean, the most prominent thing was a PlayStation. I mean, even back then, like iPod Touch, you know, that was
Oh man, I remember those.
Or the one that was like, is that the one that was on your shoulder?
I think that was the Nano.
Nano, yeah. Had one of those.
So did every box have a prize? It just depended on.
Yeah. But, you know, somebody might have spent $50 to get $1. So we got complaints. I looked into this recently. I feel like people are doing it again.
They are. No, there are these mystery boxes. Or even one thing that's really, really popular right now is cards. So people have gotten into like baseball cards, and they'll buy just tons of cards because one pack might have a card that they've been looking for, and they'll like go through it. They'll spend tens of thousands of dollars. But that's why I'm surprised it got banned, because I feel like that's a thing now.
Yeah, that's my 9-year-old son now. Actually, it was kind of funny. I don't remember if it was Cabela's or Dick's Sporting Goods, and they had like a fishing mystery box.
No way.
My son wanted to buy it, and I was like, wow, that's literally how I thought I did it when I was.
You were just too early.
Well, too early.
Did you just make, okay, so you got shut down, but did you make like low 5 figures, or did you make more than that?
I honestly don't even think we made anything. I mean, I was also doing like the retail arbitrage back then too. Like, you know, go to whatever store, look at the discount rack and sell it. I made some money doing that. Actually, that's how I like paid for stuff back in the day. I really didn't have that many like jobs. I think I like repped basketball. I worked at the mall for a little bit. So that was like retail, not Amazon, but eBay arbitrage back in the day was how I like funded, you know, myself. But, you know, back then, like as a kid, like $1,000 a month was fine.
So you've been a hustler. You're a hustler.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like the way I've grown my career is definitely like hustle, like just go forward. Very scrappy, non-corporate, as I would call it.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, played in the corporate world too, just with the same attitude. But yeah, that was the first one. I mean, that kind of got my gears turning. Wow, you can make money online. You can do interesting things. You can just do whatever you want, really, and just have an idea and launch it, right? So
how did you get into from there to like software development?
Yeah, so I mean, I was going to college. First went to JUCO. I played a little basketball. Then I went to Central Michigan, played a smaller amount of basketball there. And really, like, I was going to school to be an accountant, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I'm really glad that I didn't do it. So I honestly like went to the library and would check out books on like basic programming, which got me so far. And then really just
Hmm.
kind of like built websites, launched websites, built websites for friends. I mean, this is before, and we're talking like, like mobile devices weren't really thought of back then. You were kind of just building websites, not even necessarily using WordPress, just using HTML.
Because mobile didn't really get popular till like 2012, 2013 was when it first, I mean, even popular is a generous term to say, but that's kind of when the mobile wave started, right?
Yeah, responsive web development wasn't a thing when I started. It was like, make sure you're accounting for Internet Explorer 6 or 7 or whatever it was. That was like the most brutal part of it. So yeah, I mean, honestly, it wasn't necessarily any aha moment or like nothing has ever really like clicked overnight except maybe that eBay mystery box thing that, like spouted off. But everything has kind of just been like a slow churn, like a long term crawl to like find success. And there's been wins along the way for sure, but that's how I started. So I really like did the basics. I was doing web development, and then I got into local SEO. So I did a lot of work in local SEO earlier in my career. I guess like moving forward, I worked at Microsoft as a software developer. I worked at reviews.com running tech and parts of the content. And I think that kind of is what helped me position and like build what became my agency, which is the precursor to my business now. So yeah, I mean, it's a snapshot of really like almost 20 years now, which is kind of cool.
I think it's really cool. You got a really interesting personality because most guys in software aren't playing college basketball. I'm also glad you didn't become an accountant because I thought about it for a bit. My wife's dad's a CPA, and she's like, "You should be an accountant." I'm like, I would blow my brains out. I can't do it. So you went from accounting to software development. I mean, web development, which is interesting to me. But you built a company that you sold to Benzinga eventually, correct?
Correct. Yeah, that was my agency.
So that was your agency.
Yep.
So you started this agency, and what was the agency in particular?
I mean, it was essentially all things performance marketing. So, I mean, a lot of the model that, I learned and helped build at reviews.com with what we did there, I took and basically started servicing clients. So, Benzinga, Moneyline was another one, Rocket Mortgage was another one that we worked on from an SEO perspective.
So I'm an idiot. What is performance marketing?
I mean, it means a lot of things to different people, but to me, it's essentially, creating marketing that you derive revenue from based on performance. So whatever that might be. Like oftentimes for us, that was SEO driven content. Sometimes it was paid arbitrage. Sometimes it was content syndication, distribution. But generally it's like, we put out a piece of marketing material, whatever that is, and then that piece of marketing material makes money, which we earn a commission on. So for Benzinga, like we had a ton of content that was going through syndication. We had a ton of content from traffic through SEO. And, we would basically find the right partners that would meld together with that content or match with that content and earn a commission, have whatever the payment structure is, CPL, CPC, flat rate, et cetera, or a combination of all of them. So the model that I employed with them was kind of an interesting one where I took virtually a negligible retainer with them and had performance like an upside on it on the performance that we built. Pretty nice slug of that performance. And we built it into a 7-figure a month business. So it worked out very well. And I took that model and I had other performance clients, kind of like the same thing. I think Benzinga was definitely one of the more successful ones from that strategy.
Well, next month, it'll be a year since I started this podcast. I've had over 100 interviews. It's been a ton of fun, but I promised my wife at some point I would decide whether or not this was going to be a business or we would just continue to pay for it out of our pocket. And I'm exploring monetization, to be honest with you. There's not a ton of costs, but I do want to figure out a way to cover the editing and the packaging and the promotion costs of putting this podcast together. So I am looking for sponsors. I don't know what that looks like. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you've ever found some value and you want to sponsor, reach out to me, nick@cofounders.com, and let's get back into it.
And, we had clients that would just pay us a retainer too, right? Like they just pay us like a fee to help them, like grow their SEO presence or whatever it was. We did, web development work too. We did paid work.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it worked out very well. A couple interesting tidbits on that. I think like the people at Benzinga were great. Like Jason, Luke, if they ever listen to this, like they were really good to us. And you don't see that across all partnerships that you form, which is kind of like what I had, ran into a wall on. Like, when you're having all these like performance deals and like, upside is commission, you basically have, 20 business partners at the same time. And that's like the more challenging thing to navigate.
Did they buy you because you were just doing so well, making so much money, it just made more sense for them to bring you in-house?
I think really what happened is they got bought by private equity.
How big were they? Do you know? You have any idea of like?
Yeah, I mean, the valuation on the purchase was 300 million. So it's pretty big. I mean, when I started working with them, I think the first year I was there was only 3 million of revenue. So
Wow.
it grew very quickly. I mean, there's a couple really talented folks in that organization. One that comes to mind is Neil Hamilton, obviously like Leek Jason, Patrick Lane, Matt Kolb, who I'm working with now, partnered on with Data Shopper. Yeah, people moved really quickly and grew. There was like a competition of the business lines and how quickly the revenue could grow, and one was the affiliate revenue line.
So the 3 million when you started working with them versus $300 million valuation with the PE, what was the revenue for that valuation?
I think when they got bought, it was floating around like 45 million a year. So,
oh wow,
yeah.
So that's, geez Louise, 3 to 45 is a ton
in like 3.5 years.
Did they just catch a wave, or was it something special about what they were doing, or was it you and your team on the marketing side? Like what?
I mean, our business line definitely had a huge portion of that. There was 4 other business lines that had significant revenue too. There were 4 different, 7-figure business lines within that, or some 8-figure businesses. Like ours was an 8-figure business at one point. I don't know what it is today, but.
And just for people who don't know, sorry, Benzinga is they're
a financial media publisher. They're basically, the way that they started was they were like the Bloomberg for your average Joe, like the retail investor, and gave them access to news, data sets, information, trading ideas, analyst ratings, etc., in a simpler fashion that was digestible to the retail investor, essentially.
Yeah, I kind of compare them as a mix between the Motley Fool and Bloomberg.
Yeah,
they're kind of going after the Motley Fool-esque customer, but they are a little more data heavy than the Motley Fool is.
Yeah, I mean, they have honestly the biggest portion of their business for a while before I joined was their licensing business, and I don't know the current numbers, but they definitely had some really good partnerships from a licensing perspective. Like distributing content to brokerages, or just the raw like financial data that they would provide to whomever. It was an interesting business. There was really like 4 or 5 businesses inside of that org, which kind of all took off at the same time. Like when I started working with them.
Which line were you working with in particular?
We called it the lead gen department. So it was just all performance marketing, SEO, paid content syndication, like whatever we could do to put $1 in to get $2 out, and hopefully $5 out. That was the org that I started, headed, and ran for a long time, and that my org got absorbed back into.
Oh, okay. So you got bought, and then you're also working as the head of that organization at Benzinga.
Yeah, I was the head of it. Like it didn't exist before I started working with them. If I remember correctly, like month 1, it's kind of funny. Month 1 was starting the lead gen department. We did like $40. Like everyone's like, hey, I don't think this is going to work. And that's kind of how it always goes in this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And like month 3, we did like 60 grand, and then we did like 120 grand, just kind of like kept compounding. Benzinga was, it wasn't all just me. Like I brought in a good team too, and they had a great brand that helped facilitate that process. But yeah, so to answer your long-winded question, like they brought our org back into the group, I think, because they just wanted to improve revenue. And I had a solid book of business that was, very complementary to what we were already doing with them. So it was just like an easy way to like loop us back in, basically add like another pretty substantial chunk of revenue overnight. And like I brought my team, like, some of the core team members back into the org too, to run ops and all that good stuff.
As far as the way the agency functioned, I kind of think of the digital marketing in 2 buckets. One is the creative, where you're like designing, thinking through what the ad's going to be, et cetera. And then there's like the strategic, which is figuring out who you're targeting, which audience, what time of day, how much money you're throwing behind it, et cetera. Were you doing both? Were you doing the creative and sort of the strategic, or am I like way off? Maybe I'm an idiot.
Yeah, no, I mean, it wasn't it's not the most creative of an endeavor, to be honest. But there's some creative aspects to it. At first I was doing everything. When I started, they didn't have necessarily a site, or the site wasn't structured where you could post content, track affiliate sales, like do it in a fashion that's not, mind numbing and a horrible process. So I built the infrastructure for all the ads. I built like the different units that would, populate and showcase. And some of those still live on today. If you go on their site, there's a lot of stuff that I built that's still there. So, some of that was creative, but most of it was like from a performance marketing standpoint, like most of the work is just like functional content, testing things and seeing what works. Now you can definitely get more creative, and we did get really creative in some instances. And one example is we did like an NCAA bracket for, I think it was stock tickers, and let people vote on it as a means to like get backlinks and have fun. And a group sponsored it too. I forgot who sponsored it, but there were some creative aspects to it. But at first I was doing everything, and over time, I just kind of like replaced myself with talent as the revenue support of it.
So you were doing stuff not only to drive traffic to the site, but also once you got traffic to the site, capturing as much information as you could about people who are visiting and then retargeting them.
Yeah, or they would just click out to the appropriate partner, right? Like somebody would come through, somebody would consume a piece of content. Within that content, depending on the level of intent, like we would structure different CTAs or different offers that made sense with certain partners, and hopefully monetize them, hopefully keep the partners happy with the right audience.
Oh, so this was a revenue stream also for Benzinga because you had affiliate agreements that you were referring out to.
Yeah, it was 100% a revenue stream for Benzinga, and I took a cut.
Oh,
So Benzinga paid me, literally like a nothing retainer to do this, and I purposely, wanted that because I knew that the revenue opportunity was there. So I would rather take. I would take, in retrospect, I should have taken nothing and an even higher commission. Seriously, yeah. But so we took like a nothing retainer, and by we I mean me at the time, and a high commission, and it worked out really well. And around that, I was able to hire, my own set of agency talent, and I also helped Benzinga hire like technical resources or in-house people, etc. So it was a very like close knit relationship. But I was a vendor to them, and I took that model and worked with a lot of other groups on it. I think like Benzinga was just like the most successful and the one that I guess I'm like most open and transparent about, just because it was such a good endeavor.
I was thinking you were driving traffic to Benzinga for like signups or something, right? From individuals, but you were driving traffic from the website to affiliates.
Yeah. And some of it was to signups that they have, their Benzinga Pro platform. They have a newsletter business, they have events, and like they have their data licensing business too. So I touched pretty much every single one of those business lines in some form, but the majority of it was, like working with affiliates.
How big does that get? So your agency you built to a 7-figure a month agency. Is that like $1 million or is that like $8 million? Or maybe you can't tell me, but
no,
what did you get?
The Benzinga line was over $1 million a month. I think at its peak, it was touching $2 million a month. My agency was in like the mid 7 figures of revenue. We were taking a cut of, the revenue from our clients and, our partners.
Is affiliate revenue still a pretty significant part of businesses like Benzinga, or has it changed at all?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but by the time I left, it was still a pretty prominent business line, and really like a skeleton crew of, what it used to be. So in theory, a lot higher margin. As we were working to build it, we were spending a lot on content. We were spending a lot on resources. Now, I don't even know what the team looks like, but I guess I could ask, but there's probably like a few people left and the budgets are cut. So it should be very, very high margin at the moment. I still play in some of those circles, still work with some of the partners in a different capacity now. So I'll like catch wind of it. But for the most part, I'm like, it was a good run with them. Great people over there. Had a lot of fun. And yeah, I mean, they definitely caught some tailwind in the, like COVID, GameStop mania stuff. That helped them out a lot too with some of that growth. But yeah, I in all honesty, I still think that there's a ton more potential there. I think, if you wanted to do it again, you would just kind of have to like, not necessarily tear down what's there, but the SEO tactics and the performance marketing tactics that worked in 2018 are a little bit different now. Actually, the whole SEO landscape is a little bit different now. So
what's different?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing, are you familiar with SEO at all?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the the way that Google is prioritizing certain sites or ranking certain sites, especially affiliate-based sites, is just, it's kind of like blown up to the point where, in my opinion, a lot of people don't even know what they're doing. It's a little bit of the same tactics, a little bit more of a guesswork, but I think it's just ultimately like more risky to put a ton of dollars behind something like that again, because you've seen it time and time again. Even like Forbes Advisor just got knocked with a huge algo update. It's like a manual penalty. It's just riskier. You can build a huge business and overnight you can get wiped away. So you would have to be extremely regimented about how you're approaching that. And even still, there's a risk that you can get wiped out pretty quick. So, I mean, like that was happening too while I was working with them. So there's different ways to combat that. Like not everything from the affiliate arm was based on SEO. There was, content syndication was a huge new lever that we worked to develop. Obviously, like paid ads, paid arbitrage, found some success with there. But yeah, I mean, like just the SEO landscape is, in my opinion, it's risky. Like, would you want to invest that much money or your time? And you could. There's just a risk.
What's interesting, you can tell me where I'm off here. This is kind of my understanding of it. You're interesting because you like this arbitrage play. And you've been doing it since you were going to TJ Maxx or whatever, as an 18-year-old looking for retail stuff. But what I've seen, part of the biggest change in the SEO landscape is the way that Google's prioritizing things, and even the Google answers, where it's now like Google AI giving you an answer, and you're not going to that top ranking website that was driving a bunch of money from affiliate links after you clicked into it to find an answer to your question. It's similar, though, in the way that I view people who build social media audiences. They're building on rented land.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm on Twitter and I have a large audience, or if I'm on YouTube, or if they change the algorithm, all of a sudden you're not able to reach those people. So many people are taking the people who are seeing them on those platforms and getting their email addresses so that they can communicate with them directly offline. They can take them off platform. And what's interesting about that, I'm just like connecting the dots as we're talking, that is your new business. Like you are effectively, in the past where I had to go to Google and pay Google or Meta to access the people who are coming and accessing their website so I can target specific people. But if they change the way that they rank things, or if they change the way they prioritize things, I get kind of screwed. Whereas your business, you're now scraping these data lists and people can come to you and target very specifically through email, phone number. Obviously there's the opt-in lists, et cetera. But it's like you're moving away from having to rely on Google and Meta to access people's attention.
I mean,
is that fair?
It's extremely fair. I mean, it's part of the reason why we're doing it. I still play very much in those performance marketing circles. You still have clients in those performance marketing circles. And there is a nice parallel there with some of the stuff we're doing. But yeah, I mean, I honestly wanted a product that had zero reliance on an algorithm update.
All right, now's the part of the show where I feel the most uncomfortable, but my therapist says I need to face my fears. So here we are. I've started a newsletter and I want you to subscribe. And what you're going to get every single week are the aggregated conversations from that week that I have on this podcast with an overview of what their business actually looks like. I'm also going to throw in a review of 1 or 2 businesses that are listed for sale. I'll give you my opinion on whether or not the EBITDA multiple is good, or there's customer concentration, or there's red flags or green flags. And then lastly, I'm going to give you one piece of actionable advice every single week on how to buy your first business. So click the link below, subscribe to my newsletter, and let's get back into the show.
There's some reliance on it because ultimately our software works on behalf of the client's traffic. A lot of it is on paid traffic though. So it's like a nice steady thing.
Can you do a better job than I did of just explaining what your product is?
Yeah, absolutely. So our product is a simple piece of software. I mean, as simple as complex as you need it to be. It goes on a website in real time. You get a feed of the users that are coming to your site, and our data set allows you to return, really like a myriad of data points around that user. So some of their, contact information, their device IDs, their demographic data, their financial footprint, et cetera, et cetera. So depending on the client, you can be, really well equipped to look at those users, really like seamlessly. So this group, Data Shopper, was born out of this other group, Print Bind Ship, who was one of my long-term clients. And after I ended my tenure with Benzinga, joined up with them, and I had been working with this product for a couple of years behind the scenes. So we do, from the remarketing, we do direct mail. We do, obviously you can pipe it to a CRM or an ad platform. and do some sort of sequencing or reaching out to them, depending on how the org is set up and what their business model is. And even just you're not only getting, Thomas Rudy and my address and my info, but you're getting the fact that I have an iPhone and that I have a tablet and that I have a smart TV. So in one clean swoop, you can remarket all these people on every single platform, really for like pennies on the dollar compared to what you're doing on Google or any of the platforms, really.
Because Google and Meta don't have that granular of information, or at least they're not willing to share it with you to be able to retarget them.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's kind of a black box. They certainly have retargeting mechanisms. I don't think that they have I don't even think they want to play in this world, but they don't have like in that one clean swoop where, let's say like a regional roofer as an example, they come to the website, all of a sudden that individual, and they come to the website and it's deemed as somebody that deserves this, but that individual gets a postcard, they get some sort of, like email sequence sent out to them, or a salesperson smiles and dials them, assuming they're not on the do not call list. And then they see their ad on Meta, and then they see it on Hulu when they're watching whatever show. Really good way to like find those 5 to 6 touch points that, oftentimes salespeople will tell you need in order to get some over the finish line. And for the right product, like, a roof that's $50,000, it's so affordable that, it's hard pressed not to back into success if it's set up correctly and, like the team can administer the lead correctly and get them over the finish line.
So on Meta and Google, you're relying on their willingness or ability to share information, demographic information for these customers. With Data Shopper, if they come to your website, you can gather that information.
Yep, we can gather it anywhere too. So it doesn't have to be, it's not reliant on like everyone else's pixel. It's one pixel that can push the data to any format you need in order to retarget them.
How do you get that much information on me? If I just visit your website, how do you all of a sudden do you know my net worth or my Apple ID or anything else that you're collecting?
Yeah, so some of that is the secret sauce, but generally the group we work with that this is born out of Friendship has a number of different data relationships. I mean, they're almost 70 years old as a company. So over that time, they've formed at first it was mail printing, then it was Friendship. So it was like, it was a printing house, then it was a 3PL, and now it's, like quickly becoming like a data arm too. So, we basically have a graph that we've worked with a ton of different partners that we've sourced data from. And foundationally, at like the name and address level, we can tell you who an individual is and then use a variety of sources to essentially like enrich and amplify that data. The software itself is, it's basically returning a hashed version of, like someone's cookie information or their email information, and then we match that against our data set and can give like the complete footprint of who that individual is. Or it can also be, depending on the group, it can be salted and, like transmuted into whatever format needed in order to find the appropriate.
So all that's legal? Like all that information people collect on us is totally, I have no idea. I'm not like.
Yeah. So, we only return data that has been opted in. The biggest like no areas, you cannot robocall, robotext people. There's other forms of like how we handle opt-in too. Like we have a few different opt-in mechanisms for location sharing or, like email opt-in. So it kind of depends on the org. It depends on whether it's B2C or B2B, how we work with our customers. But yeah, like the emails that we would deliver to you would be opted in, and we have the stamp of when that person was opted in from, which one of our partners. So there's a variety of mechanisms for how to handle compliance. The easiest one, honestly, is just direct mail. You can direct mail anybody. There's not necessarily like assuming it's not flagrant or anything of that nature.
How do you get specific information? So me or Thomas Rudy, you're online. I don't know how many Thomas Rudys there are in the United States. How do I know that it's you? Like, do you have a unique identifier that is assigned to you online, and then you're able to tie that to every other data set that's been collected?
So, we have a unique identifier. Honestly, the foundation of it is just name and address. That's the foundation of it. And then from there, there's a blend and there's a mechanism to add in and layer all these other data sets. In like full transparency, like everything's getting updated constantly. As for instance, we don't like have data on minors. So when someone turns 18,
right,
there's a whole new data set, or if someone moves or if someone dies, unfortunately, like data is always constantly changing. So there are, there's potential for, inaccuracies at the micro level, but on the macro level, it's like really accurate.
So address is kind of the key that you go and measure against.
Name and address is
Name and address.
the foundation of it for sure. And then from there, you can do a lot. You can pair that with, like career data. You can pair that with their property data.
Mhm.
There's a lot of different things you can do. And really, like, it's not necessarily like an effort to, like have data on everyone. Really, the effort is to like help clients find the right audience and, like target them more effectively. Even your own data, right? Like we're working with a group now that has a pretty large data set, and they want to basically take their data and have us, do some linear regression on it basically, and tell them which one of their cohorts in that customer group would be the most applicable to XYZ product. So there's a few different like mechanisms of how we're working with clients, but really like the goal of it is to give people, again, like kind of like what Meta and Google does, give people the most accurate advertising that they are in market for, that they want to buy. And if they're not, then don't. We like skipped over 5 years of stuff, but that's the current.
I know.
From eBay to Data Shopper happened real quick.
From eBay to Data Shopper, man, this was really fascinating. Is the best place to go look at the companies just on the website?
Yeah, we have a new website that's launching hopefully this month sometime. Big. I mean, you can go check out the website. We're pretty active on Twitter too, or X rather.
Yeah, can't dead name it.
Yeah, you can't dead name it. Hard.